What if one letter could change your entire understanding of faith? A message so powerful that it redefined grace, transformed empires, and still shakes hearts 2,000 years later. This isn't just another book, it's a divine manifesto that answers humanity's oldest questions. Why do we sin? Can we ever be free? And what does it truly mean to be saved? Written from the depths of revelation and the heights of conviction, this letter became the cornerstone of the gospel itself. Welcome to the Book of Romans, a journey through sin, salvation, and the unstoppable power of God's love. Candlelight breathes along the stone walls, and the room holds its breath. Outside, the empire roars with parades and proclamations, arches and triumphs, marble and iron. Inside, a single flame leans and recovers as if listening. A man sits at a rough table, shoulders scarred by journeys, eyes set toward a horizon he cannot see with sight alone. He has crossed seas and deserts. Far more, he has crossed the gulf between rage and mercy. He is Paul, and the message within him burns hotter than any storm. Rome glitters, yet its streets echo with a hunger no feast can ease. Markets shine with bronze and purple, but hearts move like shadows. Temples rise toward the sky, yet empty souls drift beneath them like dust. Statues promise immortality, while citizens chase a breath that keeps slipping away. This is the city that names itself eternal. This is the world Paul longs to reach, not to conquer, but to call. He writes not to win a throne, but to open a door. Before him rests parchment, taut and patient. Ink waits, black and bright like a night full of stars. Thunder is far off, a murmur in the ribs of the earth. Every detail summons a memory. A road where hatred once led him, a light that unmade that hatred, a voice that turned his steps. He remembers the weight of old certainties falling like broken armor. He remembers the first breath of a life he could not have imagined. Grace did not negotiate with him. It found him in the dust and lifted him into daylight. Now he loves a church he has not seen. Names he does not know rise in his prayers like lamps along a dark road. He imagines the faces of artisans and servants, merchants and mothers, elders and children, all woven into one living body. He feels the ache of a city that crowns power and starves the soul. He feels the pull of the Spirit that urges him to send a word able to cross oceans without a ship. So he bends over the page, and his hand begins to move. The first lines are a doorway. He writes of good news, not minted by emperors, not carried by legions, but born from the heart of God. He writes of a power that does not devour, a power that heals. He writes of faith that opens the locked rooms within us. He writes to strangers as if they were family, for the love that found him has made them so. He writes with urgency, because time in this world is a tide that never waits. Outside, the empire celebrates its strength. Inside, Paul names a strength the empire cannot measure. Marble will crack, triumphs will fade, but the word he carries is seed, root, and harvest. He knows that some will read and doubt. He knows that some will read and weep. He knows that many walk beneath chains they cannot see. He knows that the gospel is a key that turns softly, then floods the chamber with morning. Candlelight trembles, and the thunder speaks again. Paul pauses, listening, not to the storm, but to the quiet that shaped the storm. He remembers every city where the message has been tested in riots, in prisons, in whispered comfort beside the sick. He recalls wounds that sing when rain draws near. He traces those scars like maps, each one pointing back to the same fountain. No decree has that kind of power. No victory arch can hold it. He writes to the heart before he writes to the mind. He calls the proud and the broken to the same table. He sets before them a cup they could never fill, and bread they could never bake. He speaks to the conscience that knows the difference between bright surfaces and true light. He speaks to the wanderer in every listener. Come home, the lines seem to say, though he never uses those exact words. The page gathers breath, as if it were alive. The city beyond the walls is a storm of footsteps, orders, coins, and oaths. Paul hears it and answers with sentences that do not shout, yet carry like bells over water. He refuses to flatter power. He refuses to curse it. He lifts the message higher than courts and banners, higher than rumor and fear. Faith rises in the room like dawn under a door. He keeps writing. The hand that once seized and scattered now serves and gathers. The eyes that once narrowed now widen with mercy. The man who pursued judgment now offers peace. This is not softness. It is strength with a different center. He lifts his eyes, breathes, and begins the letter that will cross oceans to the world. Shadows gather in the corridor of the heart. Steps echo against stone. 1,000 doors line the passage, and each bears a different name. Pride, greed, idolatry, self-righteousness. The traveler reaches for a handle and finds the same cold truth behind every door. A mirror, a face that will not look away, a stain that water cannot lift. The air is heavy, as if the room itself remembers every choice. Voices rise from distant generations. Wise voices, strong voices, gentle voices. They speak of goodness and duty and noble acts. Yet the corridor answers with a quiet refusal. The weight remains. What law reveals, law cannot heal. What reason uncovers, reason cannot restore. The traveler tries another door and another. The mirrors do not lie. The stain does not yield. There are those who build ladders in the dark. They climb on daily rituals and polished manners. They polish the mirror and call it progress. They present clean hands while hiding a trembling soul. They compare themselves with the worst they can find and feel a shallow relief. Yet, when the feast ends and the music fades, the night presses in with a simple question. What if the fracture is deeper than habit or custom? What if the heart itself leans away from the light? Others bow before gleaming statues within. Achievement becomes altar. Beauty becomes altar. Power becomes altar. The mind kneels, and the will offers incense. The smoke rises and stings the eye. Success cannot silence accusation. Praise cannot bury restlessness. The statues promise a life without need. Instead, they drink strength and give back dust. The traveler tries to leave the room. The smoke follows. Pride walks with a straight spine and a fixed smile. I am not like the corrupt and the careless, it thinks. I am the steady one. I am the reliable one. Yet, pride begins with comparison and ends with blindness. It cannot see the neighbor. It cannot see the wound. It cannot kneel. It calls its own height light. It names its own shadow virtue. In the mirror, pride looks tall and finds an empty gaze looking back. Greed hides in ordinary days. It whispers that security lives in one more coin, one more barn, one more wall. It measures worth by weight and calls hunger ambition. It hardens the face when a stranger appears. It grows quiet when mercy speaks. It keeps careful accounts with others and none with the soul. In the mirror, greed sees a planner. The mirror shows a prisoner counting keys. Idolatry wears many faces. The mind builds a god that approves every desire and never asks for surrender. The mouth speaks of truth while shaping it to fit comfort. The heart turns away from the maker and bows to the made. The mirror records the trade, a living fountain exchanged for a cracked jar, a loyal love traded for a glittering story that fades by morning. Idolatry smiles. The mirror does not. Self-righteousness stands in the courtyard and lifts a tidy prayer. It remembers every rule it kept and every scandal it avoided. It is exact with others and generous with its own excuses. It speaks often of justice and little of mercy. It calls its temper zeal and its coldness wisdom. It does not notice the beggar at its gate or the hardness of its own words. The mirror shows a ledger where a heart should be. Some try to outrun the corridor. They drown the echo with a louder drum. They fill days with noise and tasks and spectacle. They travel far. They sleep late. They laugh hard. Still, the silence finds them in the early hour. A small voice asks without sound, "Are you whole? Are you clean? Are you at peace with the one who sees you entirely?" The question lingers. The room cools. The traveler rises and lights a lamp. The words of a letter cross time like a bell across a valley. They do not flatter. They do not negotiate. They speak of a glory that holds the measure and a fall that touches every life. Not one stands above the need. Not one writes their own pardon. The corridor is honest, and the mirrors are faithful witnesses. Every door leads to the same room and the same verdict. The soul heavies under a weight that skill cannot lift. There is conviction without cruelty here. The voice does not crush. It uncovers. It opens the locked room and lets air in. It asks the heart to stop pretending and to stand in the clear light. Discomfort rises like tide because the masks learned in childhood no longer work. The carefully arranged story begins to tilt. The traveler sits with the mirror and does not look away. For the first time, the eyes soften. For the first time, the hands unclench. Reflection begins where defense ends. The mind remembers moments that had been pushed aside. Harsh words, quiet betrayals, small lies that grew like vines. Missed chances to help. Opportunities to forgive that were traded for pride. The traveler feels the weight, not as accusation alone, but as truth-telling medicine. This is what is. This is what has been. The soul listens. The silence becomes a friend. In this solemn room, the letter continues to speak. It does not promise escape through effort. It does not invite a performance. It presses a single realization into the heart. Every person stands in the same need and under the same sky. Every crown falls. Every boast dissolves. Every defense weakens. The curtain of pretense tears from top to bottom and the light enters. The traveler breathes in the cool air and admits the need without disguise. The corridor waits. The doors remain. The mirrors keep their witness. Yet, something has shifted. The weight that once felt like a verdict begins to feel like a doorway. Pride has been named. Greed has been exposed. Idolatry has been unmasked. Self-righteousness has been brought into the open. The heart grows quiet and still. Conviction has done its work. Discomfort gives way to a deeper kind of clarity. The traveler rests their hand on the next page and prepares for mercy that is stronger than shame. Chains fall like brittle iron on stone. The sound rings through the soul's corridor, where guilt once held its throne. The air that follows feels new, thin, and light, like the first breath after drowning. The voice that once thundered with warning now softens to invitation. Where judgment had stood, mercy enters. The letter that began with conviction now opens the door to something unthinkable. Righteousness is not earned, it is received. Light floods the dark hall and reveals the faces of those who had bowed beneath the weight of their own failure. Hands once clenched in fear now open. Eyes that had turned away begin to lift. The law, perfect and fierce, still stands in its brilliance, yet beside it burns another fire, one that warms rather than scorches. The message that Paul carries does not destroy the law, but fulfills it through love's impossible logic. The heart that once trembled under demand begins to rest under grace. This is the scandal of heaven. Justice is not weakened. It is satisfied by one who bore the full storm and walked out alive. The punishment fell, but it did not fall on those who deserved it. It fell on the innocent, who offered himself willingly. The divine paradox takes shape. Sin's debt, counted in full, is met not by labor but by faith. The soul that believes is declared righteous, not because of deeds, but because it clings to the one who already met the demand. Visuals unfold like dawn over ruins. Scrolls unroll, shackles open. The law, carved in stone, glows beside the cross written in blood and mercy. The two are not enemies. The law exposes the wound. Grace provides the cure. Humanity, exhausted from climbing endless ladders of morality, finally stops. The striving quiets. The mind that once rehearsed failure hears new words. You are justified. You are free. Relief fills the space like a rushing wind. The letter's tone turns from courtroom to sanctuary. Paul's hand moves quickly now. He writes not with the weight of guilt but with the breath of gratitude. He knows this power firsthand. Once a man of law, he had counted righteousness by obedience. Now he sees that the scales were never meant to balance. They were meant to tip toward mercy. The realization strikes like lightning and soothes like rain. Astonishment follows. The mind cannot grasp a love that gives before it is asked, that forgives before confession is complete, that embraces even those who nailed the truth to a tree. The world knows contracts. It does not understand grace. The idea of unearned favor feels offensive, even dangerous. It shatters the economy of pride. It breaks the hierarchy of the self-made. No one can boast, for all stand on the same ground, sustained by the same mercy. Visuals shift to a city street. The rich and the poor, the scholar and the slave, all walk under the same light. The cross towers above them, not as a monument to loss, but as a declaration of love stronger than justice. Chains break, crowns fall. A weary child lifts their head and smiles. A merchant pauses and looks at the sky. A widow kneels, not from sorrow but from joy. Grace does not discriminate. It floods the lowest places first and fills every empty cup it finds. Paul's letter becomes a song of release. The melody rises from parchment and carries across generations. It tells the sinner that redemption is not a reward for reform, but a gift for belief. It tells the weary that the work is finished. It tells the fearful that the judge has stepped off the bench and taken their place. The echo of that truth crosses oceans, nations, and centuries. Joy blooms where despair once grew. The traveler who sat before the mirror of sin now stands under sunlight that reveals no stain. Not because the stain never existed, but because another bore it away. The hands that once hid the face now lift in praise. Tears fall, but they are light tears. Tears of release, not of regret. Grace has reached the unreachable, healed the unworthy, and made the impossible possible. The weight of the law remains holy, but its burden has been lifted. The heart that once trembled at the sound of command now beats in rhythm with love. The judge has become the rescuer. The courtroom has turned into a table set for fellowship. The scroll of accusation has been rewritten into a promise. As the candle burns low, the letter glows in the dimness. It carries no decree of condemnation, only an invitation to trust. The storm that raged in the conscience has quieted. The rain of mercy falls steady and kind. Every drop whispers the same truth. Salvation is not earned by striving. It is received by faith. The scandal of grace stands as the glory of God. The heart, once bowed beneath the law, now dances in freedom. The chains lie silent on the floor, and the light continues to rise. The desert stretches beyond sight, a quiet sea of dust and wind. A lone figure stands beneath a vault of stars, eyes lifted toward the endless sky. There are no maps here, no signs to follow. No promises written in sand. Only a voice remembered and a promise believed. This is where faith begins. Not in certainty, but in surrender. Not in proof, but in trust. Abraham feels the cool night settle on his skin. Around him lies nothing but barrenness, yet within him, something unseen stirs. The same breath that once formed galaxies whispers again, "Count the stars, if you can." He looks upward, overwhelmed by number and distance. Logic says it is impossible. Age says it is finished. Reality says it cannot be. But faith listens beyond the noise of reason. Faith leans into the voice that spoke the world into being. The story unfolds in silence. No audience, no witnesses, no applause. Only obedience, written in steps across sand. Each footprint is an act of belief against despair. Every sunrise becomes a reminder that the promise still lives though unseen. In the space between command and fulfillment, faith becomes more than a word. It becomes a journey. The letter Paul writes carries this truth across centuries. Abraham's trust was not recorded as perfection of behavior, but as surrender of heart. He believed when belief looked foolish. He hoped when hope mocked him. He trusted a God who gives life to the dead and calls what is not as though it were. That trust became his righteousness. Not earned, not achieved, received. The barren land turned fertile not by calculation, but by confidence in divine promise. Faith transforms because it connects dust to divinity. It bridges the fragile and the eternal. The same force that sustained Abraham under the stars still moves through the veins of every soul that dares to believe. Faith is not blind, it sees deeper than eyes. It looks through the veil of circumstance and finds the steady hand of the unseen. The camera of imagination shifts. The desert fades into modern life. A city hums with restless motion. Crowds rush beneath neon constellations. Yet beneath the glow, the same question lingers. Can I trust what I cannot see? The human heart still trembles between fear and faith, between control and surrender. Like Abraham, every person stands beneath a sky of promises that reason cannot verify. A child in a hospital bed whispers a prayer for morning. A worker in despair lifts weary hands again. A parent forgives though no apology comes. These are the new deserts, and these are the new stars. Faith still writes its footprints across them. It does not erase pain. It redefines it. It does not promise ease. It offers meaning. It takes what is barren and fills it with unseen life. Humility flows from this realization. Faith is not conquest. It is consent. It bows where pride would demand proof. It admits that understanding is not the same as truth. The proud heart wants to reason its way to heaven. The faithful heart listens and walks forward into darkness, knowing that light will meet each step. Abraham did not earn the promise by moral excellence. He received it through trust. The letter tells us that this same grace is extended to all who believe. The imagery deepens. A seed buried in earth dies before it lives. A caterpillar dissolves before it flies. The soul, too, must yield before it becomes whole. Faith is that surrender. It lets go of control and holds fast to the word given. It stands where hope has no support. It whispers yes into silence. That yes moves mountains unseen. The stars still shine over deserts and cities alike. Each one declares the same truth. Faith is not a relic. It is a pulse that beats in every generation. It calls humanity beyond comfort toward trust in something greater than sight. The world measures by results. Heaven measures by belief. Empowerment rises quietly from this soil. The same spirit that spoke to Abraham now breathes into every willing heart. What seemed dead begins to stir. Dreams buried in fear rise again. Guilt dissolves under grace. The heart that once trembled finds new strength, not its own. Faith does not make a person invincible. It makes them alive. It turns frailty into the dwelling place of divine promise. Abraham's story ends where every believer's story begins, standing under a sky that seems too vast, too silent, too impossible. Yet, that silence hums with the voice of God. The promise that once turned a barren desert into a nation still turns despair into hope. As the stars shimmer above the ancient sand, the letter's voice reaches through time. The righteous live by faith, not by perfection, not by proof, not by sight. Faith transforms not because it changes circumstance, but because it changes the heart that walks through it. The man under the stars fades, but the promise remains, glowing in every soul that dares to believe against hope. The room dims until only a single flame survives. Its light sways and trembles, casting twin shadows that stretch across the wall. One moves calm and measured, the other restless, fighting for space. They merge, they divide, they merge again. This is the war within. The heart that has received grace still feels the pull of its old chains. Freedom has come, yet the echo of captivity lingers. Paul's confession lingers in the air. I do what I hate. The words strike with raw humanity. The man who preached deliverance still wrestles in silence. The letter that once sang of grace now trembles with honesty. Faith has freed the soul, but the flesh remembers the rhythm of rebellion. It whispers, it tempts, it promises comfort and control. The spirit longs for purity, yet the body hungers for what destroys it. Between the two stands a weary soul, torn by its own divided will. The candle flickers faster, as if mimicking a heartbeat. The struggle intensifies. Every choice feels like a battlefield. Every prayer feels like a cry into fog. The believer's mind knows what is right, but the flesh resists with cunning persistence. Sin no longer reigns as king, yet it lurks like a dethroned tyrant who refuses exile. It shouts from the corners of thought. It replays old songs of shame, hoping the soul will dance once more. The war is not loud, but relentless. It begins in quiet moments, in the turning of thoughts, in the sudden flare of envy, in the quiet compromise that no one sees. Temptation dresses itself as reason. Pride hides behind good intentions. The heart shifts between surrender and self-rule. One moment filled with holy resolve, the next captive to an impulse barely understood. The echo of Paul's struggle becomes universal. I desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. Darkness breathes around him. The candle's light stretches thin. The air feels heavy, pressed with invisible weight. The spirit fights, praying, groaning, longing for release. Yet despair lurks close, whispering that this battle will never end. The believer falls to knees, not out of piety, but exhaustion. The war has left scars. The realization burns. Salvation removes the penalty of sin, but not the presence of it. Freedom is real, yet fought for daily. The letter turns from declaration to lament. Paul's voice cracks like thunder before breaking into rain. Who will deliver me from this body of death? The cry is not defeat, but recognition. It is the moment truth meets humility. Human strength cannot save itself. The will alone is not enough. The war within exposes the limits of every resolution. It drives the soul toward surrender, not to sin but to grace. Visuals shift. The shadows on the wall seem to duel, then slow. One kneels, the other fades. Light fills the cracks where darkness once hid. The heartbeat slows, steady again. Recognition dawns like morning. The struggle itself has purpose. It keeps the believer close to mercy, dependent on the one who has already conquered. The war is not proof of failure, but of life. Only the living fight. Only the redeemed feel the tension between holiness and habit. The voice softens. Gratitude replaces fear. The soul sees that every fall becomes a step toward humility, every weakness a doorway for grace. Paul's confession ends not in despair but in worship. Thanks be to God, through Jesus Christ. The light steadies, the shadows shrink. The battle is not over, but the outcome is sure. Victory does not rest in willpower, but in union with the Spirit. The scene widens. Humanity's struggle fills the frame. Soldiers of faith, mothers of prayer, wanderers of doubt, all share the same unseen war. Temptations differ, but the conflict is one. The Spirit reaches upward, the flesh pulls downward, and between them grace stands firm. The believer learns not to trust feelings of victory, nor fear moments of defeat. What matters is staying within the light, returning again and again to the source of strength. Quiet hope emerges like the first star after storm clouds. The voice of despair weakens, replaced by the memory of promises. There is now no condemnation. The one who began the good work will finish it. The believer rises, breathing the calm after the battle. The candle burns low but steady. The scars remain, yet they tell a different story now. A story of grace that refuses to give up, of love that fights when faith falters. The war within is not the end of the journey. It is the field where faith matures. Through struggle, the soul learns endurance. Through despair, it discovers dependence. Through weakness, it encounters the strength of God. The battle continues, but the fighter no longer fights alone. The Spirit breathes, guiding, lifting, renewing. As the last flame steadies, the scene fades into peace. The divided man finds wholeness, not in perfection but in presence. The war has taught him that victory is not an event, but a relationship. In every failure, grace whispers still, "You are mine." The night exhales, and dawn waits just beyond the horizon. Wind moves across an open field, gentle at first, then growing into a steady current that carries the scent of morning. The horizon brightens, the sky blushing with light that pushes away the last trace of night. The storm has passed. The battle of the heart still echoes, but something greater has entered. The voice of Paul returns, clear and steady, carrying words that break every remaining chain. There is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. The words fall like rain on dry soil. The weight that once pressed the soul to the ground dissolves. Every accusation loses its power. The law that once shouted demands now stands silent, its purpose fulfilled. The Spirit has taken the place of fear. The heart that once beat in guilt now beats with gratitude. Freedom is not a dream. It is breath. It is wind. It is life. The camera of the soul pans upward. Mountains glow under sunrise. Fields of golden grass wave in rhythm with the wind. The Spirit is here, unseen yet unmistakable. It moves like air through lungs, like fire through kindling, like a pulse through creation itself. It comforts without words. It burns without destroying. It whispers, "Walk," not by sight, not by striving, by spirit. Paul's voice in the letter softens but grows in authority. The Spirit of life has set you free from the law of sin and death. This is not poetic escape. It is a transformation of reality. The believer no longer walks by rule but by relationship. The same presence that raised Christ from death now lives within the human heart. The same breath that hovered over chaos now hovers within. Liberation unfolds like sunrise breaking into color. Chains that once bound the conscience now lie buried in the dust. The soul that once stumbled in darkness walks with new rhythm. Every step guided, every fear met by presence. The Spirit does not shout. It guides through quiet conviction, through peace that replaces panic, through love that outlasts logic. The voice narrates the unseen. The Spirit as comforter, soft as the wind that cools a weary traveler. The Spirit as fire, fierce enough to burn away pride, consuming yet kind. It is the same power that moved through prophets, the same light that hovered over waters, the same breath that formed man from clay. Now it lives within the redeemed, no longer distant, no longer restrained. The imagery shifts again. The open field becomes a city street. The Spirit moves there too, in laughter, in forgiveness, in the courage to speak kindness when silence would be easier. Freedom is not isolation. It is participation in divine life. The Spirit teaches not through fear but through love. It reshapes thought, renews desire, restores identity. The mind set on the Spirit becomes peace itself. Renewal feels like a deep exhale after years of holding breath. The soul realizes that holiness is not a climb but a surrender. The Spirit works where law could only warn. The same flame that once terrified now purifies. The same presence that once seemed unreachable now whispers through every heartbeat. The narrator pauses. The field is bright now, full of movement. The wind bends, every blade of grass, as if creation itself worships. The Spirit fills all things yet remains intimate enough to comfort one heart at a time. The believer walks forward, head lifted, no longer hiding from judgment. The past has no power to accuse. The present has no power to enslave. The future has no power to frighten. Peace descends like soft light through clouds. The war within finds its balance here. The Spirit does not erase struggle but transforms it. Every moment of weakness becomes a chance for strength not our own. Every doubt becomes a doorway to deeper trust. The believer learns to listen, not to the clamor of guilt, but to the stillness that speaks beneath it. The law once written on stone now lives in hearts. Its demands have turned into desires. Its commands have become joy. The Spirit fulfills what effort never could: love for God, and love for others that flows naturally, like a river following its course. The soul no longer fears the edge of failure because grace has filled the valley below. The wind rises once more. Dust lifts, light dances, creation sings. The Spirit is both breath and blaze, both whisper and roar. It is the living presence that turns every wound into wisdom and every scar into story. The believer smiles, not in triumph but in peace. The journey continues, but the traveler is no longer alone. The narrator's voice fades to quiet reverence. The storm has ended. The sun stands fully above the horizon. The field glows gold beneath the sky. True freedom is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of the Spirit. It is walking each step, guided by unseen hands, carried by unending mercy, filled with unbreakable peace. The light fills the frame. The wind moves on. The story breathes. The night sky unfolds like a vast cathedral, every star a candle in the house of eternity. The voice that once whispered of grace now rises with thunder and tenderness joined. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. The words travel through galaxies, across storms, through centuries of sorrow and song. The camera lifts from the dust of the earth to the expanse of the cosmos, revealing a love woven through creation itself. Suffering enters the frame. Flames consume scrolls. Chains rattle in Roman prisons. A mother weeps over a grave. A man kneels in the dark, his hands scarred, his faith worn thin. The question trembles in every human heart. Has God forgotten me? The silence of heaven feels endless. The pain of earth feels absolute. Yet the letter does not flinch. The answer comes not as philosophy, but as presence. Love remains. Paul's voice grows fierce and steady. Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or danger or sword separate us? The list climbs like a mountain, each word heavier than the last. But at the peak, where despair should reign, light bursts through. No. In all these things, We are more than conquerors through him who loves us. The declaration does not erase suffering, it redeems it. Pain does not win. Darkness does not last. Death does not have the final word. The stars burn brighter. The camera pans across galaxies, across burning suns and frozen worlds. The same love that holds them in orbit holds every trembling soul on earth. The universe is vast, yet God's care is personal. The hands that shaped constellations also catch tears. The heart that governs eternity beats with compassion for the smallest cry. Divine sovereignty does not distance, it draws near. Sorrow softens into wonder. The letter becomes a song of defiance against despair. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? The rhythm of those words becomes the rhythm of endurance. The persecuted find courage in them. The sick find peace. The weary find strength to rise. The Spirit moves through the ache, whispering that pain is not proof of abandonment. It is the furnace where faith is refined. Transcendence takes hold. The camera returns to Paul, his face illuminated by candlelight in the prison cell. Chains hang from his wrists, yet his eyes shine. Around him, walls of stone cannot contain the truth that fills the air. He writes with fire. Neither death nor life, neither angels nor rulers, neither the present nor the future, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything in all creation can separate us from the love of God. The words leap beyond his cell, beyond time, beyond despair itself. Scenes shift like constellations forming patterns. A believer stands before a hostile crowd and does not recant. A widow lifts a song in her loneliness. A child forgives what cannot be forgotten. Each act of courage becomes a spark against the night. The Spirit weaves those sparks into a constellation of endurance. The universe watches, and heaven rejoices. The love of God remains unbroken, untouched by blade or betrayal. The narrator's tone deepens. Love is not fragile. It is not a fleeting emotion. It is the foundation of reality. It is the force that bends tragedy toward redemption and makes suffering bear fruit. Every loss becomes soil for new life. Every wound becomes a window through which glory shines. God never withdraws his heart. Even when silence seems absolute, love is working in secret, reshaping what was shattered. The music swells. Galaxies turn like slow wheels of light. Earth spins beneath them, full of tears and laughter. Paul's words rise like a hymn carried by angels. Nothing can separate us. Not failure, not fear, not death. The believer stands small under the infinite sky, yet feels infinite worth. To be loved by the eternal is to live beyond time. Faith solidifies into something unshakable. It is not the absence of pain, but the assurance that love endures through it. The camera closes on the human heart, beating steady under ribs of clay. Within that rhythm echoes the same pulse that moves stars. The Spirit breathes peace into the scene. The fire that once purified now warms. The field from earlier glows again under moonlight. The battle-worn soul stands free, head lifted, eyes full of light. The night ends with quiet awe. The stars do not fade, they keep burning, each one a promise that no darkness is final. The voice of the narrator falls to a whisper. This is the God who never gives up. The one whose love crosses galaxies and graves alike. The one who rules all and still chooses to dwell within the heart of his creation. The frame fills with starlight until it becomes pure white. Love has the last word. The wind still carries whispers of ancient names. The story narrows to a single people and then widens again to embrace the world. Israel, the root of a promise older than empires, deeper than time. Through them, the Creator unveiled his character to the nations. Covenant carved on stone, mercy written in wilderness sand, faith tested, restored, renewed. Yet, the The question lingers. If many turned away, has the promise failed? Paul's voice returns, analytical yet reverent. God's gifts and his calling are irrevocable. The plan of heaven does not collapse under human frailty. What looks like rejection is redirection. What seems like delay is design. Through one nation came the revelation. Through their story came mercy for all. The branches may differ, but the root remains holy. The imagery unfolds like a parable. A vast olive tree rises on a hillside, its roots ancient, deep as time. Some branches grow wild, others cultivated. Some have been cut, others grafted in. Yet all draw from the same life beneath. The sap that once nourished one lineage now flows through many. This is the mystery of the chosen, that election was never exclusion but invitation. Curiosity fills the air. How can one people's story hold the destiny of all? The answer gleams in the symbol itself. The root is God's covenant, unbroken and alive. The first branches are the patriarchs, sturdy with faith. The grafted limbs are those once far off, now brought near. The gardener tends all without favoritism. Pride cannot stand here, nor presumption. Every leaf owes its life to the same unseen source. Paul's tone turns prophetic. Do not boast against the branches, he warns. If God could graft you in, he can restore those who were broken off. The metaphor humbles and heals at once. The story of Israel is not replaced, but continued. Their faith, their struggle, their covenant all form the foundation upon which mercy for the world stands. What began in one tribe has become a tree sheltering nations. Revelation deepens. God's plan moves like a river that sometimes hides underground, yet never ceases to flow. What appears as detour is in truth the path itself. The unbelief of some opened the door for faith in others, and through the faith of others, those first called may be stirred again to seek the promise. Mercy circles the globe like sunrise, touching first one horizon and then another until the world is bathed in light. The camera pulls back to show centuries of fulfillment. Prophets and poets, kings and shepherds, each thread in the tapestry of redemption. Every covenant, every exile, every return finds its place in a design too vast for human mind yet perfectly coherent in divine sight. The mystery is not confusion but beauty hidden until its appointed time. Gratitude rises like incense. The believer stands before the living tree, touching the bark that bears the marks of pruning and renewal. Here is proof that faithfulness outlasts failure. Here is evidence that love writes straighter lines with crooked stories. God never abandons his workmanship. The same hand that tended Israel's roots tends every heart grafted into this grace. The letter shifts from explanation to worship. Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. The voice trembles with awe. His ways are past finding out, yet his mercy is near enough to touch. The plan of heaven is both vast and intimate. Nations rise and fall, but the covenant endures. Individuals falter, yet the promise stands. The tree's branches sway in a golden breeze. Leaves shimmer like tongues of fire in the sunlight. Each one tells a story of belonging, some once wild, some long nurtured, all alive because of the same root. The Spirit moves through them like wind through music, weaving unity out of difference. The believer gazes upward, seeing not division but design. Peace settles in the final image. The tree stretches toward heaven, its roots gripping deep soil, its branches spread wide enough to shade the world. The mystery of the chosen is not a riddle to solve but a reality to receive. God's faithfulness does not age or decay. His promises travel through generations, through nations, through hearts both ancient and new. The gardener never forgets his tree. Every branch matters. Every leaf shines with purpose. The story continues to grow. Morning spills over the city of Rome, lighting its marble temples and narrow alleys alike. The sound of merchants fills the streets, soldiers march in steady rhythm, servants hurry with baskets, and the hum of life swells under the empire's weight. Yet somewhere beyond the noise, another rhythm beats quieter, deeper, unseen. It is the sound of hearts transformed. These are the living sacrifices, men and women whose worship has left the temples and entered the ordinary. Paul's voice guides the scene. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. The words echo through courtyards and kitchens, through markets and meeting houses. Worship, once confined to rituals of fire and incense, now lives in the pulse of daily faithfulness. The altar is no longer of stone, but of life itself. Every act, every choice, every breath becomes an offering. The merchant counts coins, then sets aside part for the hungry child at his stall. The soldier stands at his post and guards with justice instead of cruelty. The servant sings softly while sweeping marble floors, her song lifting higher than the ceilings she polishes. The baker shares bread with strangers. The widow prays for those who mocked her faith. The carpenter forgives the man who cheated him. These moments go unnoticed by the world, but heaven records them as songs. Instruction fills the air like morning light. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The world demands ambition, competition, and applause. It praises the loud, the clever, the ruthless. Yet Paul's words call for a different pattern: quiet courage, humble strength, steady kindness. Transformation begins not in grand gestures, but in the unseen corners of thought. The mind renewed by the Spirit no longer measures worth by wealth or power, but by love that serves. The challenge comes next, sharp and necessary. Renewal means resistance. To live differently in a world that prizes self is to walk against the current. The Roman believer who refuses corruption risks livelihood. The servant who refuses vengeance invites ridicule. The young woman who chooses purity is mocked as foolish. Yet every refusal to conform is a small act of revolution. The kingdom of God grows not through swords, but through surrendered hearts. The narrator lingers on the faces of the faithful. They are not saints carved in marble. They are people with tired eyes and calloused hands, yet something radiant lives behind their weariness. They have learned that sacrifice is not death, but devotion, to forgive when wronged, to love when slighted, to serve without reward. These are the fires in which their worship burns. The letter continues its rhythm of instruction and inspiration. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor. The words weave into scenes of compassion. A family taking in a stranger, a woman visiting prisoners, an elder sharing his meal with orphans. The church becomes a body alive with purpose, each part needed, each part sacred. The Spirit breathes through these acts. The living sacrifice is not consumed, it is renewed. The believer gives, yet grows stronger. The offering is not loss, but transformation. What is laid on the altar of obedience returns multiplied as joy. The fragrance of such lives fills the air of Rome, not the scent of burnt offerings, but of mercy, patience, generosity, and peace. The narrator's tone softens with reverence. True worship does not seek applause. It does not live for recognition. It is found in hands that work, in hearts that forgive, in minds that stay clear when the world grows dark. The believer becomes temple and priest at once, carrying holiness into markets, workshops, and homes. Inspiration gathers like evening gold over the city. The same streets that echo with the empire's pride also echo with quiet songs of redemption. The letter's command becomes a living melody: overcome evil with good. The merchant chooses honesty when deceit would profit more. The soldier spares when cruelty would be easier. The widow gives when she has little left. Each choice builds a kingdom unseen but eternal. As the sun sets, lamps flicker across windows. A small gathering of believers kneels together in a hidden courtyard. They pray not for escape, but for endurance. They pray to be living sacrifices, steady lights in a darkened empire. The narrator closes with calm conviction. Worship is not a moment. It is a life poured out. It is humility in motion, mercy embodied, integrity tested and proven true. The camera rises over the rooftops of Rome. The glow of oil lamps mirrors the stars above, small flames declaring the same truth. Transformation begins within. The Spirit renews minds, reshapes hearts, and turns ordinary days into sacred ground. The world sees servants, heaven sees priests. The living sacrifice walks the streets again tomorrow, quiet but unstoppable, carrying the fragrance of eternal love. The light of dawn spreads across the world, touching mountains, rivers, and cities. The story that began with one man and one letter now stretches beyond walls and nations. The gospel has traveled through storms, prisons, and empires, carried not by armies but by love. Paul's final words rise like a crescendo over the hum of the earth. Live in harmony, love one another, carry the good news to all. Scenes unfold in a grand montage. In one corner of the world, believers gather in secret rooms, breaking bread with trembling hands. In another, they stand openly in markets, feeding the hungry and healing the broken. Hands extend across tables, across oceans, across differences. The same Spirit that once filled an upper room now fills the globe. Light spreads from face to face, kindled by compassion, fueled by purpose. Paul's voice continues, calm yet commanding. Let love be genuine. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in peace with one another. The words move like wind through the crowd of humanity, silencing pride and softening hearts. The faith that once felt personal becomes communal. It grows from private devotion into shared mission. The letter that began as theology now becomes movement, love turned outward, faith in action. The camera captures glimpses of ordinary believers, a merchant comforting a stranger, a family sharing food with travelers, a child lighting a small lamp for prayer. Each act a spark in the expanding flame. The voice of narration declares that this is the kingdom at work, not through domination, but through mercy. The empire that once seemed eternal crumbles in time, but the gospel continues to rise. The music swells. Paul's journey nears its end, but his vision reaches far beyond him. He sees the unity of the Spirit, not in sameness, but in shared love. Jew and Gentile, slave and free, man and woman, all one body, many members, each needed, each chosen. The divisions of the world fade in the light of this truth. The church is not a monument but a movement, not a structure of stone but a living presence in every nation. Triumph fills the frame, not loud but lasting. The voice of the letter speaks with finality. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. The words ring like bells across the centuries. They call believers to gentleness in strength, to humility in victory, to generosity in all things. The faith that began with one encounter on a dusty road has become the heartbeat of redemption itself. Serenity follows. Paul stands at the edge of the sea, the wind brushing his robe, the horizon glowing gold. Behind him lies hardship, before him destiny. His eyes lift toward Rome, not as a city of power, but as a symbol of the world he longs to reach. He knows his own journey will end in chains, yet his hope burns brighter than fear. The gospel will not die with him. It will live in every heart it has touched, in every word he has written, in every act of love it inspires. The narration softens into reverence. The mission continues because love does not rest. It crosses boundaries, heals divisions, speaks to enemies, feeds the poor, lifts the fallen. It unites believers into one family and sends them out again as light into darkness. The story does not end here, it only widens. What began as a letter to Rome becomes a message to all creation. The final image unfolds slowly, the earth turning beneath a canopy of stars. Lights flicker across continents, the glow of faith alive in hidden places. The voice concludes with quiet strength. This is the call to unity and mission, to live as one body, to love without limit, to carry hope until every shadow is gone. The music fades to stillness. Paul gazes toward the horizon, the wind lifting his hair, the scroll clutched to his chest. He smiles, not in triumph, but in trust. The light reaches his face as dawn breaks fully over the world. The camera pulls back, the city shrinking below, the earth glowing like a single candle in the hand of God. The story closes where it began: one man, one message, one unstoppable love destined for all creation.